जग में कीर्ति कमा सकूं।
मैं बनूं इंसान अच्छा, जग में कीर्ति कमा सकूं।
भारत भविष्य बना सकूं, भारत भविष्य बना सकूं।
समाज के लिए उठे उठे, जगे स्वराष्ट्र के लिए जगे जगे। स्वयं सजे वसुंधरा सवार दे, स्वयं सजे वसुंधरा सवार दे। हम उठे गजब हमारे संग साथियों, तो सब बढ़ेंगे अपने आप साथियों।
जमीन पे आसमान को उतार दे,
जमीन पे आसमान को उतार दे।
स्वयं सजे वसुंधरा सवार दे,
स्वयं सजे वसुंधरा सवार दे।
गांव और शहर की दूरियों को काटते चले।
ज्ञान को प्रचार दे प्रसार दे,
ज्ञान को प्रचार दे प्रसार दे।
सजीव सुंदरा सवार दे।
सजीव सुंदरा सवार दे।
समर्थवान वृद्ध और नारियां रहे सदा, बड़े बड़े बलों की शान ओढ़ती रहे धरा।
तरक्कियों की एक नई कतार दे,
तरक्कियों की एक नई कतार दे।
सजीव सुंदरा सवार दे।
सजीव सुंदरा सवार दे।
ये जाति धर्म बोलियां बने न शूल राह की, बढ़ाए बेल प्रेम की अखंडता की चाह की।
सद्भावना से ये चमन निखार दे,
सद्भावना से ये चमन निखार दे।
सजीव सुंदरा सवार दे।
स्वयं सजीव सुंदरा सवार दे।
उठे समाज के लिए उठे उठे, जगे स्वराष्ट्र के लिए जगे जगे। स्वयं सजीव सुंदरा सवार दे,
स्वयं सजीव सुंदरा सवार दे।
सजीव सुंदरा सवार दे।
स्वयं सजीव सुंदरा सवार दे।
स्वयं सजीव सुंदरा सवार दे।
Thank you, everyone. Before we begin, I would like to read out the rules once. Participants are requested to keep their video off and audio on mute. Please do not present the screen during the webinar. If you have any questions during the webinar, please type them in the chat box. We have set time aside for the questions towards the end of the webinar. Without further delay, our volunteer, Ganesh, will introduce our speaker for today, Professor Amrita Sahasrabudhe. Over to you, Ganesh.
Thank you, Dia. Ms. Amrita Sahasrabudhe is an assistant professor from the Department of Psychology from Nagindas Khanwala College, Autonomous. She has been in teaching field since last 9 years and has taught subjects like industrial psychology, development psychology, counseling psychology, psychological testing, and organizational behavior. She also currently pursuing PhD in the field of industrial and organizational psychology. Apart from academics, she has been a national level rifle shooter and a sports enthusiast in general. She has also conducted training programs for athletes, students, and corporates. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Good evening,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Good evening,
Good
Amrita
evening,
madam.
sir.
Welcome.
Good evening, sir. Thank you. Uh, Thank you so much, Kanish. Thank you so much, Dia, and all the dear NSS volunteers. Before I begin, I would like to thank Dr. Vivek Chaube, Professor Nandkishore Sonar, all the members of NSS, student volunteers. It's been a special connection with NSS almost every year since this program has begun. I have been given an opportunity to share my thoughts, so I would like to sincerely thank the entire NSS team for the same. So can we begin, sir?
Yes, madam. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, I would like to begin now. So the topic which I have chosen this time is something which I hope is very relatable to each and everyone who is present over here. The topic is related to stress and coping. So stress is a phenomenon which, like I said, is relatable to each and everyone. Stress and coping is something that all of us do on a regular basis, on an everyday basis, and it's a process which just goes on. So this is a topic that I'm going to talk about. So at the outset, let me put a disclaimer that after this session, I am making no claim that you will not feel stressful. I'm not making any claim that it will take away all the stress from your life. All that I am aiming to do is help you or facilitate you uh, in case, you know, if some of your coping skills can be, if you can be equipped with some more efficient coping skills. So all that I'm looking forward to when we are talking about stress and coping. So before we begin, let me confess, you know, since past few months, when you know, when I'm thinking about stress, when I'm thinking about coping, you know, I'm thinking about who are the people who are going through a lot of stress since past almost 6 7 months or even a year. So you know, who might be the person who is extremely stressed at this point in time, or you know, maybe since the last 6 7 months. I can't help but think of this person and this poor, I don't know what he calls it, Riyasate Madina. So I'm starting on a hilarious note. So you know, this is the part of the world, territory of the world, which is constantly facing a lot of stress since past few months. Abhi to bichare, this person is not even a leader of them anymore. But you can just see how they motivate their people by just saying, "अपने घबराना नहीं है." So you know, God bless this country which has got such motivational leaders. So these can be the people that you know we can look forward to when you're talking about coping with stress. But keeping that you know, keeping that joke aside, keeping that fun aside, let us start with our session. I would like to talk about certain facts before we set the ground for the session. When you're talking about stress and coping, there are certain things that all of us need to remember very well. And please remember, I'm setting these things, I'm putting up these things as facts and not my opinions. So there is a lot of research. Every statement that I'm going to make now has been backed by a lot of research, not only in the field of psychology, but in the field of medicine and physiology as well. So there are certain ground facts that we need to state before we start the session. So when you're talking about the term stress, of course, we will see what it means and everything. However, before that, these are certain facts, like I said, which are very important to understand. The first thing is, like I said before, it's a part of nearly everyone's existence. Now, when I say everyone's existence, I'm not even limiting myself to human beings. You know, even animals, even for them to survive, it is extremely important that they have this feeling of stress. So we will talk about the evolutionary advantage of stress and everything. But please remember, whether it's a you know, animal or a human being, whether it's a you know, let's say child who is 7 8 years old, or an aged person who is 80 90 years old, the person may be from whichever part of the world, but stress is a part of everyone's existence almost on a daily basis. So that is something that we need to remember as a fact. The second fact that I would like to state is that when we are talking about stressors, basically stressors are things that cause us stress, or stressors are those things which have the potential to threaten us. Now, we need to remember, normally when we talk about stressors, we talk about negative events, we talk about something that can be unpleasant. However, we need to remember that all stressors are not unpleasant. The basic uh, uh, the basic work of any stressor is to make you alert. Now, we cannot say that everything that makes me alert has to be unpleasant. I will give you an example. There are certain events in our life which are very, very pleasing, which are very, very happy. However, they can cause stress. The first very common example can be a person who is getting married. So, of course, the person is very happy. The person is looking forward to it. It's a, you know, new journey that is beginning. However, we cannot say that he's all relaxed and you know he's not bothered about it. He's very lethargic. You can see a person, you know, one day before his wedding, you can see what I'm talking about. The stress that he's feeling, it's because of a positive event, but still that is stress. So we need to remember that stressors need not always be unpleasant events. There are certain very happy events in our life. Another example which I can give you is giving birth to a child. It's an extremely stressful event, but that is going to be followed by a very happy consequence. But still, you know, that causes stress. So to varying degree, more or less, but all stressors need not be always negative. There can be some positive stressors in our lives as well. The third thing that we need to remember is that stress is not just a psychological phenomenon. there are definite neurological and biological processes which form the basis for stress. So whenever you are in a situation in which you are feeling stressful, the feeling is not just your emotions. The feeling is not just your, it's not just a psychological feeling. It is followed or it is backed up by very clear cut and specific biological processes and neurological processes. So your brain and body is involved in the whole process when whenever you're feeling stressful. So we will see how there is. I'm going to give you little details about that in the presentation as well. And lastly, this is the most important of all of these to remember, and even this is a fact. This is not my opinion. Even though stress reaction is automated, it is possible to make it controlled. So even though we say that getting stressful is a very natural thing, yes, it is natural. However, the extent to which you will feel stressful and the extent to which you will be able to manage it is under your control. Fortunately, stress reaction is automated, but the extent to which you will manifest it, it's in your hands. So before we move on with the session, please keep this as the background on the basis of which we will be discussing the further things. So if I may go ahead. So, let's try to understand this buddy a little better. So, why I'm calling it a buddy? Like I said, first of all, it's always there. It's whether you like it or not, it is going. It's like your, just say, it is just like your shadow. So, it will be with you whether you want or not. And secondly, like I said, it's not always bad. It can at times be helpful as well. So, let's try to understand it a little better. Now, there are lots and lots of definitions of stress which are available, but I have chosen the one which is easier to understand and which kind of covers, many aspects of it. So, when we are talking about stress, to simply put, what is it? It's the physical and emotional response to events which can threaten or challenge us. So, I have highlighted the terms which, according to me, are important over here. First of all, like I said, it's a physical response. Physical in the sense that, like I said, definite and specific body parts and parts of the brain are involved when it comes to reaction to stress. Secondly, it's an emotional response as well. So it not just involves your body or your nervous system, but it involves your emotions as well. So it's an emotional response, and this response is in the presence of stimulus or event which has a potential to threaten you or challenge you. I can put it again, to put it very simply. Just half an hour before this session, I was feeling very quiet. I was at my equilibrium. I was very balanced. Now I know that at 5 o'clock I have to start the session. So I know that I'm predicting that, I am supposed to present. I'm supposed to be prepared. So now मेरा equilibrium disturb हो जाता है. This is a situation which is likely to threaten me or put a challenge in front of me. So my reaction to it can be summed up as stress. Now, this example which I gave you is, it is something some people may feel more stressed when they're presenting, some might be less stressed, or some may not be bothered at all. So these are stressors which are, which are very subjective in nature. So, अलग-अलग लोगों को अलग-अलग level का stress होगा. There are certain stressors, however, which are extremely threatening and which are very, very real and which can be very, very fatal. Okay. So why I'm giving you this example, you will realize how stress can sometimes help us. Okay. So when you look at this picture, I'm sure that all of you, everyone, will agree with me that this is a real stress. So this is definitely an event which has a potential to threaten you, to challenge you to the extent that it is fatal. So of course, if a person comes in front of a tiger and he's not feeling stressed, either he is intoxicated or he is having some problem with his IQ. So I mean that's the only conclusion that we can draw. Because see, when you come in front of something which is fatal, which is extremely dangerous, you have to feel stressed because otherwise you cannot survive. So when I said that stress has helped us, it has an evolutionary background. So all the species which have survived so far, that is why I included animals in that as well. All the species which have survived so far have this very basic instinct of getting stressful whenever something that can challenge or that can be dangerous that comes in front of them. So human beings are no exception. So it is stress has been helpful for survival. So that is the reason this emotion, this feeling is still with us that we are, let's say for example, if you are going for a trekking. So, when you are on the cliff of the hill, you feel stressful, and it is important to feel stressful because stress serves a very important function that it makes you alert. If you're not alert in such kind of situations, you know what is going to happen. So, it has been very helpful. So, that is somewhere, somewhere a reason that you may not be able to control the situation which might make you which might make you stressful. You can control the reaction, but it is an automated response in our brain that we feel stressed in front of certain stimuli. Now, when you're talking about coping, when you're talking about, of course, when you see a situation like this, there is very little scope as far as coping is concerned. So, if you are interested in case of, let's say, if you come across a tiger, there are many interesting videos on YouTube, like how to survive a tiger attack, and also you can go through it. But for any average individual, I don't think this is something that he can cope with. But forget this situation. When you're talking about real life stressors, coping with stress will depend upon two things which are very important. The first thing is appraisal of the situation, and second thing is your ability. So appraisal of the situation, we will talk about it in detail in the later part of the presentation. But appraisal ka matlab hai, how do you perceive the situation? Like I told you, when I'm preparing for this session, when I know that half an hour के बाद मेरा session है, session के 5 मिनट पहले जो stress मुझे feel होता है, possibly to other speakers the level of stress can be more or less, even though the situation is same, that they are supposed to present in front of a group of people, but still the level that they feel can be more or less depending on the appraisal of their situation, depending on how they perceive, according to them, how dangerous this particular situation is or how threatening this situation is. If I feel that the situation is completely out of my control, of course I will feel more stress. If I feel that it is not as stressful, I will be able to overcome it, then I'll be, less stressed in that situation. Second thing that it depends upon, and these things, if you see, I have purposely made an arrow, these things interact. The second thing that it depends on is your ability. In other words, stress puts certain demands in front of you. Stressful situations are demanding, they are challenging. How do you appraise the situation in terms of when you try to try to evaluate how much resources you have, how much ability you have in order to cope up with it. So let's say, for example, before this session, if I'm very well prepared, I know that my ability is much more than the demand which is put in front of me, so I will feel less stressed. However, if I start preparing yesterday and मेरा कुछ ready नहीं है, just मुझे कल I have been told since a long time, but I forgot. I suddenly start preparing it yesterday, and so today I'm not that well prepared. So then I know that my ability right now is not that much. My resources are not sufficient. So as a result, I am likely to feel more stressed. So always remember, when you're talking about coping with stress, it depends upon these two things. How do you evaluate the situation in terms of how stressful it is? And how do you evaluate your ability or resources, whether you have sufficient resources to cope up with the stress or not? Okay. Till now, whatever we have seen, if there are any questions, please put in the chat box. If you want to interrupt, you can start your mic and ask me anything in between. I'm assuming it till this everyone is with me, everyone is able to understand, and let us move on. Now, when we are talking about stress, okay, is there a question? Okay. No, I don't see any question popping. So, okay, we can move on. So, when we are talking about stress, we have to give credit to one person who is actually known as the father of stress research. His name is Hans Selye. He was a physician and a researcher, a Canadian physician and researcher. So he, gathered a lot of data and studied a lot about this phenomenon of stress. On the basis of his research, he gave a theory called as General Adaptation Syndrome, or popularly known as GAS theory. A very funny name, but it makes a lot of sense. So it's a reaction to any situation which is perceived as threatening. So GAS theory tells us that in general, how people are likely to, or how people's reactions can be predicted when it comes to they are in a stressful situation. So according to this GAS theory, people's reactions or responses go through three different stages, and this is common for any kind of stressor and any kind of person. If you can see the image, uh, yeah. So you can see over here, the image states that basically if we plot the reactions of people on a graph, what it says is uh, in the beginning, okay, it starts with something called as alarm stage. So let's say, for example, this fellow who came across a tiger. So when he notices the tiger, the first thing that he will notice, the first thing that he will go through is his body will, it will sense that there is something stressful and he will become alert. So that is the alarm reaction. We will go through all the stages in detail. After alarm stage comes the next stage, which is he is actually facing or trying to cope up or fighting with the stressor. So that is resistance stage. He is trying to resist the stress as much as possible. After the stressor is gone, let's say, for example, the person somehow is able to survive that tiger attack. Suppose he climbs up on a tree and the tiger is not able to reach there. So he is able to survive the attack. The next thing that comes, the next thing that body goes through, the next phase is called as exhaustion. Okay. So to understand the three stages better, the first stage is called as alarm reaction. Okay. So like I told you, when people become aware that there's going to be a stressor, there is alarm and mobilization. Let's say, for example, when you are sitting in a class, okay, and suppose sir or ma'am is taking a lecture, and they're first 20 minutes आप lecture में बैठे हो, you are listening to them. Suddenly that sir announces कि अभी आपका surprise test है. So you can imagine कि till now आपका जो equilibrium है, suddenly it gets disturbed and you become alert कि something threatening, something stressful is going to happen. So there is an alarm and mobilization. Mobilization is आपके body के resources एकदम से mobilize हो जाएंगे to cope up with the stress. So that is the first stage. When we are talking about, that is what I said, that it has a definite biological base. So just to give you a brief, as far as our nervous system is concerned, our communication system in the brain is concerned, one division of that is called as sympathetic and parasympathetic. So sympathetic nervous system का sympathy का मतलब क्या है? Sympathy is, you kind of feel what the other person is feeling. So your nervous system sympathizes with what you're feeling right now, and it prepares you so that the person can cope up with stress. So this sympathetic nervous system, it will become energized. So your pupils will dilate, the blood circulation will become more rapid, you will become more alert. I will show you what all the responses happen when it comes to that. So a person will be able to, so that the person will become alert, and he will be on his toes when it comes to coping with that particular stress. Now, when we are talking about alarm stage, quickly people try to assess that what can I do over here in order to deal with the stressor. Okay, there are three kinds of assessment, three kinds of responses which are possible. First thing is, if you feel that you are able to deal with the stressor, you try to fight with it. So let's say, for example, आपका एग्जाम का ये हो गया, announcement हो गया कि आपका सरप्राइज टेस्ट है. Okay, so at that point in time, some of you will feel that चलो कोई बात नहीं, let it come, let us take it as a challenge. So whatever I know, I will try to give my best. So here you are trying to fight with the stressor. Another response which is possible, some people which might adopt, is flight. Flight means running away. Okay, so here they will try to give excuse saying that surprise test mat lo sir, we are not prepared, we will lose marks, और मुझे वॉशरूम जाना है, ये करना है, वो करना है करके they will do something which will make sure that they are running away from the stressor. Okay, and next reaction, last reaction which is possible, there are certain stressors, there are certain situations in which you cannot do anything. So literally your brain and your body freezes. So आपको जो मैंने पहले image दिखाया, that tiger, if a tiger comes in front of you, you can't fight with it, you can't run away from it because eventually it will catch you. So many times people become frozen. So suddenly वो blank हो जाता है, they don't know what to do. So that is the freeze reaction. Okay. Of course, fight, flight, or freeze, it depends on other things as well. It depends on the potential of the stressor as well. So alarm, preparing your body to deal with the stressor in whichever way possible, fight, flight, or freeze. That is the first reaction. Now, after your body is prepared, now comes the part where you're actually coping, you're actually doing something, indulging in some action to cope up with the stress. So this stage is called as resistance. You're trying to resist that particular stress. So during this stage, the body is actively fighting the stressor on a biological level. So you're, like I said, that you're alert and your all your resources are mobilized in order to deal with the stressor. Let's say, for example, if you are walking somewhere down the road and if you see a barking dog coming towards you, all your energy, all your thoughts, everything will be mobilized, and you will all that you will do is you will try to run away as fast as you can. That is how you are dealing with, that is how your resources, you are completely utilizing them. तभी आपके दिमाग में और कुछ नहीं आएगा. All that you will have, the only thought that you will have is I have to save myself. That's it. So here you are acting it, dealing in an action, or you are engaging in a behavior which will help you in coping with the stress. So during resistance, people use a variety of means to cope with stress, sometimes successfully. So many times people are able to successfully deal with it. But when you are using resistance, always remember there will be some degree of physical or psychological well-being. So when you are able to withstand stress, for example, you will be able to run away from the dog, but then there is a possibility आपका BP high हो जाएगा, and there will be you'll palpitation, there will be you will be able to you will struggle to catch breath. All these things will happen. So some amount of physical and psychological well-being it will cost you when it comes to resisting the stress. So it is literally like how the image shows that you are applying your full energy in order to resist it. Let us say, for example, the example which I gave you right now. So a student who faces the stress of failing several courses. Now you have, let's say you are thinking ki chalo abhi to you all are aware, the students of Nagindas Khanwala College, their ATKT exams are starting, okay, next week onwards. So when you think about those exams, you feel stressed that, oh my God, there is an exam coming up. What am I going to do? One of the coping strategies that you have is spending long hours studying and preparing for the exam. That is how you are trying to cope up with your stress. The more prepared you are, the less stressed you are going to, or you are likely to feel. So that is one of the coping strategies that might be used. Now, after the stressor is gone, after you are out of that stressful situation, the body tries to restore the resources which are exploited. So it is literally like जैसे phone का battery down हो जाता है, आपके body का battery down हो जाता है. So exhaustion is a stage where after the stressor is over, after the stressor is gone, the person is literally, the term itself says the person is exhausted. So the person's ability to fight the stressor declines to the point where negative consequences of stress will appear. So like I said, surprise stress hai. So however, you try to get away with it, you try to finish it off. But uske baad aapka jo, the thoughts that you will have or the consequences that will follow will be, maybe, you are still feeling very, very negative about it. Maybe you are still anticipating that you will not be able to score well, and that is still giving you a lot of stress. So that is the exhaustion stage. So here, physical illness and psychological symptoms might start to appear. In psychology, there is a very interesting, interesting kinds of. We will see that in the later part of the presentation. Interesting kinds of disorders which are called as psychosomatic disorders. So because of these, the stressors that you have, or because of anxieties and other fears, it will actually have an impact on your body as well. So a person will not be able to concentrate on whatever is he is doing. There will be heightened irritability. He will get annoyed and irritated very quickly. Or in severe cases, it might lead to loss of touch with reality. The person can actually become psychotic in extreme cases. Now, you might feel ki how is it possible? How can someone feel so stressed that the person will become disoriented? ऐसा कौन सा stressor होता है? But let me give you certain examples. I'm sure you must have heard about the Nazi concentration camps which were set up in the Second World War. So lots of studies were conducted on the prisoners who survived through that, and actually a lot of them did become psychologically sick. They did become psychotic. The reason behind that is they were put through extreme amount of stress each and every day. So their ability to cope up, their ability to resist that was exhausted to a point where they lost touch with reality. So that is the last stage, that is the exhaustion stage of the general adaptation syndrome. Now, why I'm highlighting this point, that there are bodily reactions which are involved when it comes to stress, and the two nervous system that I talked about. So if you see over here, the sympathetic nervous system, in the presence of stressor, it will try to make your body alert. So your pupils will expand. So that you will take in uh, more information about the stressor. There will be fast and shallow breaths. So in case you have to run away or you have to apply a physical force, heart will pump faster. The blood circulation towards all the parts of your body will be more. The gut digestion system, you don't require it. Okay, so that will become, or even that will become inactive. So those body parts which are not used in stress, they will become inactive. Now after the stressor is gone, the parasympathetic nervous system will take over, and it will try to calm down your body. So your pupils will shrink, that the breathing will be now slow and deep, the heartbeat will slow down, and then your digestive system and everything will become, gut will become active. So that is what I said, that this is something that we need to learn, but it is something that is very, very automatic. Nobody teaches your body how to prepare itself to deal with stress. It has all the mechanisms to prepare itself and to pacify itself once the stressor is gone. Now, uh, when we are talking about stress and coping, we also need to talk about the kinds of stressors which have the ability to threaten or challenge us. Now, even though we are kind of animals, but the kind of stressors which animals feel and the kind of stressors which we feel are very, very different. So animals, let's say for example, animals have only this stress of surviving and maybe finding their mate and reproducing and taking care of their children. That's it. But as human beings, we are susceptible to certain man-made stressors as well. So it's not just the natural or real threatening things that can scare us or that can make us stressful. There are other kinds of stressors as well. So briefly, if we have to think about the stressors which may, be threatening to human beings, we can divide them into two different kinds. One kind is called as acute stressors, and other ones are called as chronic stressors. Now, acute stressors are those which happen suddenly, which occur in front of you out of the blue. You are not prepared for it. Usually, it happens only once in a blue moon. It doesn't happen on an everyday basis. Usually the intensity is very high, so the impact or the way in which it will strike a person, it will be very, very dangerous. It will be very, very the intensity will be very high. So one of the examples that we can think of when we are talking about acute stressors are accidents. So if someone is caught in an accident, someone is in that situation, so it happens suddenly, the person is not prepared. Usually accidents, same person will not go through accidents on an everyday basis, so it's one time. uh, Usually they are dangerous, so the event is very intense. So those are acute stressors. Whereas there are other kinds of, so acute stressors are not very common, so we may not go through them every time, or there is a possibility that someone may not experience acute stressor at all. That's a possibility. There are other kinds of stressors that we are more vulnerable to, and they are the ones which are called as chronic stressors. Now, what do you mean by chronic stressors? Chronic stressors are long term, which means that it will stay with you for a long time. It almost for your lifetime. They are continuous in nature, so they will keep on happening on an everyday basis. They might be less intense compared to acute stressors. So let's say, for example, uh, an employee, when he feels that his job is giving him a lot of stress, so he has to deal with it on an everyday basis. It's going to stay with him till the time he is holding that job. It might be less intense. So if you compare it with an accident, the intensity of stress is much less. Of course, we have to agree. However, we need to remember one thing, that chronic stressors की वजह से, chronic stressors have the potential to move the person towards something that is called as burnout. So if it keeps happening on an everyday basis, there will come a point where the person is not able to bear it. Okay, we will talk about burnout as well as a consequence of stress. So I hope the difference between acute and chronic is clear to everyone. Uh, e- Other examples of acute stressors can also be, let's say, a natural calamity, or let's say witnessing a terrorist attack. It is something that people are not prepared for. It is something which is very, very intense. Other examples of chronic stress can be, let's say, if a parent is having a special, let's say, a child who is limited in terms of IQ, so maybe taking care of, or let's say a person is taking care of the parent who is suffering from Alzheimer's disease. It's a long-term stressor, and it does have a potential to literally exhaust the caregiver to a great extent. So that can be an example of a chronic stressor. So I hope it's clear to everyone. Now, having talked about the kinds of stressors, we also need to think about the origins of stress. Origins of stress in the sense that uh, which all factors or which all variables can we say from where the stress actually comes into picture. Okay, so there are a lot of if you ask job interviewers, college counselors, or why they have given the example of bridal shop owners. The very reason I told you that even though marriage is a happy event or supposed to be a happy event, it has the potential to make the person extremely stressed. So they will tell you that not everyone reacts in the same way to a potentially stressful event. So let's say, for example, the job interviewer might tell you that there are some candidates who panic so much that they're actually on the verge of fainting. They will come in the interview room and they will first ask for water, so they are not able to function without that. There are some who are very relaxed. There are some who act as if they are not bothered. So uh, depending on who is reacting to stress, we can have different patterns. So, what is it that brings about this difference in people's reaction? Uh, there are these two researchers, Lazarus and Folkman. They say that people move through a series of stages that determine whether they will experience stress or not. So, depending upon, if you remember, I told you that it's about appraisal and ability. Okay, so these two researchers put it in a slightly different way. So, when you're talking about appraisal, okay, they talk about two kinds of appraisal. First is called as primary appraisal. So what do we first of all remember? Appraisal ka matlab hai you are evaluating a situation. Okay, and always remember this is happening at a very automated and unconscious level. You are not constantly consciously thinking that okay, abhi let's say for example I am crossing the road. There is a huge bus which is coming in full speed towards me. I'm standing there and I'm thinking, अच्छा अभी मेरा primary appraisal शुरू हो रहा है. It doesn't happen that way. It is very very automated. So what do we appraise in primary appraisal? It is the first step. It's the individual's assessment of an event to determine whether its implications are positive, negative, or neutral. Okay. Let me give you an example. Let's take the same example of marriage. Okay. Now, uh, see, there are lots of reasons why people get married. Okay. There are few who might get married because they really want to. There might be others who might get married because the family is pressurizing. Okay. So depending on that, they will decide ki after I get married, whether the implications are going to be positive, negative, or neutral. Is it going to make my life happier or worse, or is it not going to change my life at all? Depending on this appraisal, the other things will follow. So if a person sees the event as primarily negative, he or she will appraise it in terms of the harm that it has caused in the past, how threatening it is likely to be, and how likely it is that the challenge can be resisted successfully. So here, marriage example may not fit very well, but we can take example of let's say a job interview. Okay, now let's assume someone who has been appearing for like let's say he has given 3 4 job interviews before, but they had not been really good. Now, when he is appearing for the next interview, if he predicts that it's going to be bad and I don't think I'm going to be selected, if he looks at or predicts the implications to be negative, he is already having a past experience where he has not done well in job interviews. And according to him, his confidence is not that high that he will be able to crack it. So, of course, this appraisal is going to make him feel more stressed. So let's say for example, if let's say अभी जैसे मैंने आपको कहा कि आपका ITKT का एग्जाम आ रहा है, okay? So if you have or if you think about the previous failures that you have gone through before appearing for the paper, then you will feel more stressed. However, if you are appearing because you missed the exam because of some other reason, but you are very confident that you will do well. So primary appraisal आपका अलग हो गया, so then your stress level will be different. So primary appraisal is one thing. The second appraisal, second kind of appraisal that we follow. So first appraisal that we take is that of the situation, the stressful situation that you are into. The secondary appraisal that we indulge in is of our resources. So चलो मुझे पता है कि demand इतना है. Next appraisal that I will do is of my resources. how much resources do I have in order to meet the demand? Are they sufficient or not? So secondary appraisal is the person's answer to the question, will I be able to handle it? Or do I have the necessary and sufficient abilities to resist the stressor or handle the challenge? It's an assessment of whether his or her coping abilities and resources are adequate to overcome the challenge which is posed by the potential stressor. Like I gave you this example before, that for this session I have been preparing for a long time. So, when session शुरू होने से 5 minutes पहले, when I'm thinking about it, I know that yes, I do feel stressed. I have to be alert. I have to be on my toes. But I know that I am having sufficient resources. I am prepared enough to take the session. So as a result, the stress that I will feel will be less. However, if I start preparing it, from yesterday, my slides are not ready. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I know that my resources are not sufficient enough. So as a result, while I am going through the stressful situation, I know I am going to feel more stressed. So that is my secondary appraisal. So here, people try to determine if they will be able to meet the dangers in the situation or not. If resources are lacking and the potential threat is great, they will experience stress. The picture which I showed you in the beginning, if a person comes across a tiger, then of course he knows that the potential threat is great. It is actually fatal. He knows that he doesn't have resources to cope up with the situation. So, unfortunately, in such cases, no coping mechanism will help you. It's only at the mercy of the stressor to decide if you will survive or not. It's at the mercy of the tiger. But like I said, lots of situations in our life are not so much threatening. So secondary appraisal is about whether I do I have the enough or sufficient resources to cope up with the stress or not. One thing we need to remember over here: stress, the amount of stress that you feel, it varies with the person's appraisal. So how do I look at the situation, and how do I look at the situation varies with the person's temperament and circumstances. So it's all very much interrelated. You might find this sentence very confusing. So always remember, how much stressed I will feel. It depends upon how do I look at the situation. But what determines my perception of the situation? My temperament, my personality, and the actual situation. So that will determine how I perceive the situation. There are certain variables or certain factors which play a role. The first factor, that here it talks about temperament. Another term that we can use for that is your personality. In personality, there are lots of traits, lots of characteristics of people that are talked about. One interesting division of personality which people make is either they are type A or type B. Have you heard about type A or type B? Can someone tell me what is it? Can someone tell me what is a type A personality and type B personality?
Type A personality is angry.
Sorry, please go ahead.
Type A personality is angry.
Okay, yes, one of the characteristics is they are easily angered. Anything else?
They are very grumpy and rude.
Type B
They are
personality
rude.
is lazy.
is very reactive and type B is very normal.
Okay, I heard somebody saying type B personality is very lazy. Okay. So I also heard somebody saying
Careless
type B
also.
is very normal. Yeah, sorry.
Careless also.
Type B is careless. Okay. Very interesting. Anything else? Okay. So see, all the answers that you all gave, to a certain extent, all of them are right. All of them are correct. However, we need to be careful when we are using adjectives like lazy or normal, things like that. So first of all, we need to remember that there are very people who are completely type A or completely type B. So we all are somewhere in the middle. There are very few whom we can categorize as completely type A or completely type B. टाइप ए पर्सनालिटी का जो एक सिग्निफिकेंट फीचर है, देयर आर लॉट्स ऑफ फीचर्स. दे आर वेरी एम्बिशियस, they can be easily angered, they become restless very easily, they are very much achievement oriented, they are very competitive. So On the contrary, if you see type B people, they are relaxed. They are, not in a hurry. So rather than saying lazy, we can say they are not in a hurry. They are not very easily angered. They are more adaptable. They are more flexible. They can, adapt to any situation that they are into. So having talked about these characteristics, it's very easy to guess that if your personality is more towards type A, you are more vulnerable to stress, because that is how you react to situations. For example, if you are competitive and if your teacher announces a surprise test, even though it's a surprise test, you have to do well, because if you don't, you will feel very extremely bad, because the nature is that you're competitive, you're ambitious, so they are likely to take more stress. On the contrary, if your friend is having a little more of type B personality, you will like, अरे क्या फर्क पड़ता है, इतने सारे टेस्ट लेते हैं, इसमें एक और टेस्ट है, you will not be bothered. So type B, जितना आता है करो, बाकी का छोड़ दो. So they are less likely to feel stressed. It's not that they don't, but the extent to which, the intensity with which they feel is less compared to type B. So, compared to type A. So personality in terms of type A, type B is one factor. The next that we have to talk about is circumstances, or the actual kinds of stressor that we are talking about. So see, there are certain stressors which are really very, very threatening. So let's say injury out of accident, illness, या फिर कुछ natural calamity हो गया, physical stressors. So these are stressors which actually, are really have the they do have potential to threaten you. But there are some which are not, which may be man-made or which may be artificial. For example, pressure that you have to build your career. So it's not that it may be fatal, but it is stress, and people will stressful, and people will experience it to a different degree. Another thing that will matter is your history with that particular stressor. If you have been able to overcome that stress before successfully, you will be more confident that even this time you will be able to cope up with it. For example, मैंने आपको job interview का example दिया. Suppose there is someone who is giving interview in, let's say, 3-4 companies. Okay, उसका 2 companies में already selection हो चुका है. When he goes for the third interview, and it's like, he has a choice now कि उसको कौन सी company join करनी. So when he goes for the third interview, the history is, it's quite good. He knows that I will be able to crack it. I'll be able to do very well. So he will feel less stressed. So history of that person with that particular circumstance or situation. So all these three, and again remember that there is an interplay between situations, interplay between factors. So it's not that, let's say, for example, let me give you example of one interplay. Suppose a person is type A, okay? He is very, very, very ambitious, very, very achievement oriented, very, very competitive. So for every interview, he will give his best. So even though his previous history is successful, he will still feel stressed because he wants to do well every time. So it's an interplay between different kinds of factors. Having talked about these interplays, there are certain stressors, certain situations which will cause more stress to everyone, regardless of who is going through it, and certain others which will be less stressful. So let's talk about events which will be more stressful. Now, like I told you, stressors can be of two types, positive and negative. So of course, events which produce negative emotions, for example, loss or death of someone in the family, it will cause more stress to a person compared to events which produce positive emotions. For example, birth of a child. So of course, it puts people, or it makes them go through different kinds of responsibility, and that is another stress. But ultimately, the outcome is positive. So that is less stressful compared to something that is associated with loss or death. Second thing is, events which are uncontrollable or unpredictable will cause more stress. Let's say, for example, if someone knows that he or she is diagnosed with cancer, suppose, here the example can be, like I said, accident. It is not something that is predicted. It comes out of the blue, and suddenly, your world is literally devastated. So it's uncontrollable, unpredictable. So person will feel more stressful compared to predictable or controllable situations. So let's say a person who is diagnosed with cancer and knows that he or she will die in next 2 months. Of course, it's very, very stressful to even, imagine that feeling. However, the person has no surprises now. He knows that it is going to be there. It's going to be a reality. So still managing that will be easier compared to if suddenly out of the blue something happens in front of you. Another example which I can give you, surprise test is an example of uncontrollable situation because it suddenly comes in front of you. You are not prepared for it. And an exam which is going to start, let's say, and जिसका आपके पास timetable है, you know that which paper is when, it is more controllable because you will be able to prepare for that. So that is another thing. The third thing is events which are ambiguous and confusing. Ambiguous is you are not able to make sense out of it. So let's say, for example, when I told you this terrorist attack. So when people 26/11 का जब attack हुआ, and you can imagine somebody who is there in the on the CST station, people don't know ये क्या हो रहा है, कब खत्म होगा, how do I react, where do I go, where all these terrorists are scattered. People were not knowing anything. So confusing and ambiguous events are definitely more stressful compared to clear and unambiguous events. Clear and unambiguous maybe, let's say we can take the example of surgical strike. The goals were very clear. Everyone was clear in terms of what is to be done. Every soldier was knowing his responsibility. So even though they are putting their life at stake, but still there is a lot of clarity. So rather than reacting to a terrorist attack, initiating an attack is less stressful. So that is there. And an event which is overburdening, which means that a person is already going through a lot of stress. Another, let's say for example, an employee who is going through a lot of stress on his job. So अगर उसको ही सब लोग ज्यादा काम दे रहे हैं, that will be overburdening. So that will be more stressful. However, if the person is not having a lot of responsibility before and some additional responsibilities are given, it will be less burdening. So regardless of the personality, regardless of the situation, these factors, these are certain common factors which will determine whether an event will be more or less stressful. Having talked about the stressful situations, types of it, this, that, all that we need to focus now on is consequences, or in other words, what does that stressful situation do to a person. So first of all, we need to remember that if you are going through stress every now and then, like I told you, your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system will automatically work. They will work in synchronization. But अगर ये बार बार हो रहा है, so then the term that is used is constant wear and tear, which is caused by physiological arousal due to stress. It will definitely take a toll on your health. So because stress overstimulates the immune system, it may begin to attack the body itself. So what happens is when a person is constantly taking stress, the immune system is so much on its toes that rather than killing, the viruses and other damaging things, it will actually start damaging the healthy tissues. So, it will become automated to such an extent. So as a result, there will be, when there is immune system is overburdened, there will be frequent these kind of things: headaches, backaches, skin rashes, indigestion, fatigue. Even people will have cold every now and then. So it's, if you remember, I told you the term called as psychosomatic problems. This is what I'm talking about. So it may lead to psychosomatic disorders, medical problems. So these are medical problems caused by interaction of psychological, emotional, and physical difficulties. So if a person is constantly going through stress, this is somewhere down the line going to happen. So if you can think of professions like police force. Now, police every day, literally in a country like India, they have to go through stress on their job every now and then. So they may actually think of taking retirement even when they are in their 40s because they are not able to take it anymore because they have to go through it on an everyday basis. So it may take a toll and might lead to a condition which is called as burnout. If you look at this picture carefully, you will realize what I'm talking about. So there is a limit in terms of how much stress a person can take. And if that limit is crossed, it will lead to a condition called as burnout. So on a psychological level, high levels of stress will prevent people from adequately coping with life. So their coping mechanisms, whatever they are doing in order to deal with the stress, they will be exhausted sooner or later. Burnout के काफी सारे symptoms है. One of the symptoms is these people will lose interest in life. So their view of environment, their view of the world will become clouded. So they'll feel that everyone is bad, everyone is plotting against me, and no one in the world can understand me. Everyone has become my enemy. So their world view will become very clouded. At highest level of stress, emotional responses may become so extreme that people are unable to act at all. So there will come a point where, let's say for example, job पे उसके उस person के ऊपर, they are just putting more and more responsibilities every now and then. There will come a point where he will tell the employer that go to hell, do whatever you want, I don't care. So it will be at such a level that he will not be able to act at all. Now, having talked about burnout, this is, and as far as jobs are concerned, this is something that we seriously need to look at, because it is actually turning into kind of a toxic culture where uh, working for more hours and putting much more efforts that you can handle, it is celebrated. It is viewed as glamorous. It is rewarded. So, but it is taking a serious toll on people's health. So it is something that because many of you, the students, you are able to, or you are going to enter the world of work. So this is something that you need to be aware about, the extent to which your body can handle stress, and the extent to which you should let it overshadow other things, other parts in your life. So this phenomenon of burnout is very important to understand. Now we talked about stressors, we talked about their consequences. Now we need to learn, like I told you in the beginning of the session, what I'm aiming at is to help you realize certain coping mechanisms which will, facilitate in handling the stress a little better. So, coping refers to your efforts to control, reduce, or learn to tolerate the threats that lead to stress. That is known as coping. Now, see, all the terms which are used are very, very important. First of all, you may do something to control it, you do something to reduce the stressor. Or if nothing else, if you know that this is something that you are going to be stuck in for many days or many months or lifetime, you should develop the ability to tolerate it. So like I told you, if someone is diagnosed with cancer, there is nothing that can be done about it. So he needs to imbibe this ability to tolerate the stressor. So even that is known as coping. Now, when we are talking about coping strategies, there are different strategies which people use. Okay, four of them we can quickly go through. The first one is called as problem-focused coping. Actually, the term should have been solution-focused coping, but anyway, the term is problem-focused coping. So it refers to when you attempt or you do something to modify the stressful problem or source of stress. So let's say, for example, when you see a barking dog coming in front of you, you either try to run away or you try to आप रास्ते से कुछ पत्थर उठा के you try to throw it in front of him and try to उसको आप भगाने की कोशिश करते हो. You are trying to solve the problem. That is problem focused coping. These are strategies which lead to changes in behavior, or there is a plan of action in terms of how to deal with stress. So you know that your exam is coming, and you want to improve your grades, so you start preparing for it, you start studying. That is an example of problem focused coping. Another example of that can be taking time out from stress to create positive events. This is very, very important for people who go through chronic stressor. Let's say for example, somebody who is taking care of a parent who is having Alzheimer's. Now let me tell you, it's an extremely toxic job for a caregiver to take care of somebody with Alzheimer's. So maybe taking a day off and doing something that you like, even that can be an example of problem focused coping, because it gives a little bit of relief to your body, a little bit of relief to your mind from indulging in that stressful event. So that can be problem focused coping. The next kind of coping which people indulge in is called as emotion focused coping. Many times it happens when people know that they cannot do anything about the stressor. All that they have to do is tolerate it. So emotion focused coping may people try to manage their emotions in the face of stress by seeking to change the way they feel about or perceive a problem. Now let's take the same example of somebody who is caring for the parent who is having Alzheimer's. Now the person knows that he cannot abandon his parent. He knows that he cannot put him somewhere कि कहीं old age home में उसको नहीं रख सकते या जो भी है, he knows that all that I can do is I have to bear with the situation. So he will try to change the way he looks at it. So let's say for example, he will try to feel that it is like I'm reciprocating reciprocating the care which my parent had given me when I was young. So it is like I'm giving it back. So it's very, very rewarding for me that I am taking care, I have become a parent to my father or my mother. So they will change the way they look at it. They will change their emotions surrounded by it. Another example of emotion, it may include strategies like accepting sympathy from others and looking at bright side of the situation. So seeking support from others, asking others to help you out, even that can be an example of emotion focused coping. Going to a counselor, sharing your concerns, all that is an example of emotion focused coping. It works best in situations which are really unmanageable and out of one's control. So, like I told you, some Jew who is caught in a Nazi concentration camp and there is no way to escape it. All that he has to do is build his coping mechanisms to tolerate the stress. So, emotion focused coping will be helpful in that manner, in that situation. The next kind of coping, which comes is called as avoidant coping. Avoidant coping means the person tries to run away from the situation or indulges in wishful thinking. Let's say for example, मैंने आपको वो example बताया कि आपका surprise test होने वाला है. Suppose some of the students might indulge in avoidant coping by thinking that अरे I wish मैम का इंटरनेट नहीं चलेगा और उनका she will not be able to take that, वो उनका Google form open ही नहीं होना चाहिए. This is wishful thinking. You are thinking about something that is very less likely to happen. Another form of avoidant coping is taking routes like drug use, alcohol use, overeating. So everything that will distract you from the thought of stressor, but it is not taking the stress away. So that is avoidant coping. So an example of wishful thinking, like I told you, if there is a test tomorrow, a person will think maybe it will rain so hard that the test will be cancelled. Very rarely it happens, so it doesn't really help. Similarly, a person getting drunk to avoid thinking about a problem, that is an example of avoidant coping. Why I'm telling you these coping mechanisms is so that for you to understand which are helpful and which are not very helpful. The last kind of coping, which is very, very less likely to be successful and helpful, is called as defensive coping. Defensive coping is even if people do not consciously cope with stress, somewhere they try to use unconscious defensive coping mechanism. So it involves unconscious strategies which will distort or deny the true nature of a situation. So आपके surprise test में जो भी the teacher is telling you कि surprise test है, some people will be like it can go to hell, I don't care. Anyway, what if I fail in the exam? क्या फर्क पड़ता है? कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता. And they will tell others कि अरे मार्क जुकरबर्ग, स्टीव जॉब्स, ये भी तो सब फेलियर्स है. तो वो फेल हो गए तो क्या, how what they made out of it. So how does it matter if I fail? They are trivializing or they are not taking the threat seriously. So that is called as defensive coping. Of course, it is not helpful because it is again distracting you from coping with it. There are certain people who are able to cope with any kind of stress very, very well. And these kind of people are called as hardy personalities. What do you mean by hardy individuals? They are the people who take charge of their life's challenges. Who are high in hardiness. They are more resistant to stress related problems compared to others who are low in it or low on it. They react to potentially threatening stressors with optimism, feeling that they can respond effectively. So let's say, for example, a person who is going for an interview, if he's having a hardy personality, he will look at it as an opportunity and not a threat. So he knows that it's, if I crack it, and I am going to crack it, I have the essential resources and it's going to be very good. So they try to boost themselves up when they are into stressful situations. By turning threatening situations into challenging ones, they are less apt to experience high levels of stress. So their level of stress will be optimum, where they will use this stressful feeling in order to perform better. So they are the hardy personality kind of. So if you want to develop this kind of hardy personality, it consists of three things. First of all, they have a very high level of commitment. So whatever they are doing, let's say they're preparing for an exam, they will be completely merged into it. They will be completely involved into it. They have a very high level of commitment towards whatever they are doing. Second thing is they are very clear in their thoughts that change is going to be there and I have to be prepared for any kind of change in my life. So normally लोगों का reaction ऐसा होता है कि they don't want any change. They prefer status quo. But people who are hardy enough, they believe that status quo is going to be challenged, and they are always ready for that. That is another feature. Third thing is, they have, in psychology there is a term called as internal locus of control. So they believe that whatever happens in my life, I have a control on it rather than somebody else. So the perception that I am able to influence what happens in my life. So they have a very high sense of internal locus of control. So if you have these three characteristics, or if you are able to build these characteristics, you will be less vulnerable to stress, and you will also build an ability called as resilience. What do we mean by resilience? It is the ability to withstand, overcome, and actually thrive after profound diversity. These are the people who are going through a lot of stress, but they are able to come out of it, literally shining out of that. So these people are generally easygoing, good natured, and they do have good social skills. If you remember, I keep mentioning this: people who survived Nazi concentration camps, you know, these are the people who were resilient, which means that they were able to, they went through something that no one can imagine. However, when they came out of it, they were able to overcome that stress, and they were able to thrive and achieve a lot in their life afterwards. So these people are resilient, they are independent, and again they are having a internal locus of control. So even if they feel, that's okay, even if I am captured right now, I'm a prisoner, but I know that the situation will change, and I know that I will be able to overcome it. So they have this sense of internal locus of control. So they work with what they have, and they try to make the best of whatever situation they are into. So they will not sit and cry कि अरे मेरा ये हो गया, मेरा वो हो गया, I have lost this, I have lost that. They will not do it. They will think of what they have practically and how they can make the best use of whatever resources they have. So this is the ability to be resilient, which will help people in moving forward. Another factor which matters a lot is how much social support a person has when he is going through stressful situations. So our relationships with others will help us in coping with stress. So of course, one of the factors which collectivistic, because we are a collectivistic cultures, we have this inherent advantage that we have people, we have caregivers, we have loved ones who come together in order to support us in stressful situations. So researchers have found that social support, uh, the knowledge that we are a part of mutual network of caring, interested others, it enables us to experience lower level of stress and better cope with the stress that we undergo. Let's say people who suffer through a natural calamity, it's a group of people who suffers through that. So when they are there, when they hold hands, when they know that they are together, it actually helps in reducing their stress. So one experiment, it actually found that the activation of the areas of the brain which reflect stress, it is reduced when, even if you are simply holding a hand of somebody who is going through stress, उसकी वजह से भी stress का reaction काफी कम हो जाता है. I want to show you a picture over here, and can you, this very popular picture. So can you tell me what is it about? Can anyone tell me what this picture tells us? Okay, let me tell you. You all must be knowing that few weeks back, 2 3 weeks back, there was a devastating earthquake which happened in Turkey, or Turkey as they call it now, and Syria. Okay, so it was so. I mean, the intensity was so high that over 50,000 people have died so far. So, and maybe the number will increase. So immediately after this news was out, India was among the one of the few nations which sent their NDRF, जो disaster management का उनका army का force है. So they sent the teams. There were some 7 or 8 or 10 teams, I think, which went to Turkey, and they set up hospitals over there. They were doing the relief work. They were doing वो वहां से जो भी buildings collapse हुए थे, लोगों को निकालने का काम कर रहे थे. There were dog squads which were sent as well. So a lot of help, and not only India, from many other countries, lot of help was provided to people who were suffering from a natural calamity. So, and I'll give you another scenario. Turkey received a lot of help, but Syria, on the other hand, did not receive much help from the Western countries. India did help Syria with whatever capacity it has, but Western countries did not send a lot of help. So if you can see, the people of Turkey will feel less stressed compared to people in Syria because they are having so much of social support. So this is a picture. This is a soldier of Indian Army. I think she's a doctor, and this is the lady from from Turkey who is giving her a hug. And it is so overwhelming for them to see that people from some other country are actually coming and supporting us. So social support when people have in the uh, stressful situation, it helps them a lot in overcoming it. So I would like to end this with certain quick tips in terms of in overall, if you want to better manage your stress. Like I told you, I will not tell you that आज के बाद आपको stress नहीं आपके आज के बाद आपको stress नहीं होगा. That is going to be lifelong. All that we need to work on is how to deal with it in an efficient way. People underestimate this fact a lot. आजकल social media, YouTube, ये सारी चीजों की वजह से one thing that people compromise is their sleep. So if people are less slept, they are likely to feel more stressed. So getting enough sleep is very important for your body to recover and be efficient next day when it's going to again deal with different stressors. uh, because like I told you, when you have a lot of social network, a lot of social support, a lot of friends to help you out, it will make you feel less stressed. So strengthen your social network. Many times people feel stressed because they are poor as far as time management is concerned. So they try to procrastinate, they try to avoid, they try to postpone things, but it gets piled up. And suddenly, when these things come, suddenly, जब सारे deadlines एक साथ आ जाता है, they feel more stressed. If you are able to manage your time well, if you're able to, have a specific timeline for your tasks, that will help you in managing your stress. Taking out time to nurture yourself. So, especially when you are working, you should take breaks and give time to yourself. You may not do anything. वो एक बहुत famous ad है, I think 5 star का. It says that, you know, sometimes try and do nothing. कभी कभी कुछ ना करके देखो. So, every time you are told ये करो वो करो, sometimes just relax and don't do anything. Just nurture yourself. Ask for help. This is something that many people are very shy of. So if you are feeling that you are not able to take that particular stress, if you feel that you are not able to withstand it, please go and ask help. Please go and seek help. It is not at all a shameful act. It is very, very necessary for you to seek help if you feel that you are not able to cope up with stress. As much as possible, try to use solution focused coping. So like I told you, those two styles of coping which I told you, try and do something to change the problem. Try and do something, put some efforts to modify the situation that you are in. Learn some relaxation techniques, learn some yoga, learn some meditation which will help you in quickly calming down in a stressful situation. So this was from my side. I think this was the last technique, and I wind up my session. I hope I have not gone past my time. So if you have any question and answers, we can take them right now. Sona sir, did I take a lot of time?
No, ma'am, no.
Okay.
Well within time.
Okay. Thank you. So if anyone has any questions, anything to ask, please go ahead. You can put your questions in the chat box as well.
Thank you, ma'am. Without further delay, our volunteer. Sorry. Now the dais is open for any queries. Please type them in the chat box. As the
Or you
program
can directly unmute yourself and ask the question. No problem.
okay.
Yes, even that works.
As the program ends, our volunteer Grena will propose the vote of thanks. Over to you, Grena.
I, Grena Gopi, on behalf of NSSL University of Mumbai, NSS Unit B28 of Department of English and Nangidas Khanwala College of Commerce, Arts and Management Studies, Autonomous, consider it my privilege to propose a vote of thanks for this webinar. We are extremely grateful to Assistant Professor Amruta Shastra Budde for addressing us on this topic. She took valuable time out from her busy schedule to do this for us. I'm sure all the participants must have benefited immensely from today's topic, stress and coping. Thank you, ma'am. I'm also grateful to our director, Dr. Mrs. Nancy Jose, our principal, Professor Dr. Mushmi Datta, our vice principal and IQAC coordinator, Dr. Mona Mehta, area coordinator of Western Suburban District of the University of Mumbai, and Nagendas Khan, and NSS program officer, Dr. Vivek J. Chaube, and HOD of English Department, Associate Professor Neeta Dote, convener of the program, Assistant Professor Nand Kishore, for rendering us a constant support. I also thank our management, the MKES, for giving us the opportunity to organize this event. I extend a big thanks to all our NSS faculty as well as the faculty of English Department and student leader for their cooperation. As no program can be a success without an audience, I would like to thank our participants too. We hope you have taken a useful lesson from today's session. Thank you all for making this event such a success with your patient presence. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chobe sir. Thank you, Sonath sir. Thank you all the participants and NSS volunteers.
Thank you,
Everyone,
Thank you, madam.
thank
Photo
you.
ले लिया?
Amrita,
Photo?
you were
Thank you,
wonderful.
madam.
Thank you.
Everyone can leave once the sir photo
We
ले
have
रहे हैं?
posted the feedback form in the chat box. Make sure you fill the
Yes,
feedback
yes,
form
madam.
and then sign up. Thank you.
Namaskar, Nita madam. Good evening.
Namaskar.
Good evening, ma'am.
I didn't come on camera, but I was looking at her slides. I was very interesting. I like the examples you gave.
Thank you.
Very apt ones.
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome.
Sir, photo done.
ठीक है, मैडम.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye, ma'am.
So sir, we wind up. May I leave?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Taking the picture, no?
Yes, ma'am. The
yes,
preparation
ma'am.
is
Okay.
Okay.
ठीक है.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye then.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye, ma'am.
I'll also leave. Bye.
Bye, ma'am.